Greetings, beings of questionable intelligence across the galaxy. Marcus Webb here, your friendly neighborhood human broadcaster, coming to you live from the Nexus Arena where the 847th Annual Galactic Hunting Championship is about to begin. Yes, that's right, I said human broadcaster. Apparently, the Galactic Sports Network thought it would be hilarious to hire the one species that everyone considers about as threatening as a wet napkin to commentate on the universe's premier predator competition. For those just tuning in, the Galactic Hunting Championship is where the galaxy's apex predators gather to prove who's the ultimate killing machine. Think of it as the Olympics, except instead of running really fast or throwing heavy objects, contestants compete to see who can murder the most creative selection of dangerous alien wildlife. It's wholesome family entertainment at its finest. This year's contestants are, as always, a delightful collection of nightmare fuel. First up, we have Vex'tar from the Crystalline Collective. Picture a praying mantis that went to MIT, grew to 8 feet tall, and decided that regular mantis arms weren't sharp enough. So it replaced them with vibrating crystal blades that can cut through titanium. Vex'tar has won this competition 4 times running, and honestly, looking at those Slythe arms, I'm not surprised. Next, we have Grondak from Titan's Forge. Grondak looks like what would happen if a grizzly bear mated with a mountain, then that mountain learned to bench press planets. Standing at 12 feet tall and weighing approximately 1 small moon, Grondak comes from a world where the gravity is so intense that their equivalent of butterflies are made of solid rock and can crack skulls just by landing on them. Grondak considers a light workout to involve wrestling with creatures that breathe lava and eat diamonds for breakfast. Our third contestant is Slythe from the Shadow Realm, and yes, that's actually what their dimension is called. Apparently, even interdimensional beings lack creativity when it comes to naming. Slythe is what happens when tentacles learn to hate and darkness gets a PhD in murder. It's basically a living shadow with more arms than a Hindu deity and twice the homicidal tendencies. Slythe doesn't hunt prey so much as it makes prey question their life choices before eliminating them from existence. And then, there's Earth's representative, Jake Murphy. Jake is a 34-year-old pest control technician from Detroit who got entered into this competition because he happened to answer the phone when the Galactic Registry called Earth asking for our apex predator representative. The person who answered before hanging up on what they assumed was a prank call was Jake's boss, who thought it would be funny to give them Jake's number instead. So here we are, 3 killing machines that could probably take on a small army each, and Jake, who once got scared by a particularly aggressive raccoon and had to call backup to deal with a wasp nest. The other contestants have been openly mocking Earth's entry since registration opened. Vex'tar keeps making what I assume are insulting clicking sounds whenever Jake walks by. Grondak literally laughed so hard when he saw Jake that he caused a small earthquake and cracked the arena's foundation. Slythe hasn't said anything, but shadows have been snickering, which is apparently a thing that can happen. Jake, for his part, keeps asking if anyone knows when he can go home and whether his travel insurance covers interdimensional mauling. It's heartwarming, really. The prize for winning this year's championship is 10 million galactic credits and the title of Universe's Apex Predator, which comes with bragging rights across 17 different star systems and a really nice trophy that's apparently made from the crystallized fear of extinct civilizations. The betting pools have Jake at 50,000 to 1 odds against even surviving the first challenge, which honestly seems optimistic. Let's see how this absolute disaster unfolds, shall we? Before we dive into the actual competition, let's take a moment to appreciate just how spectacularly outclassed our human representative is by examining where these creatures call home. It's like comparing a goldfish to Jaws, except Jaws has laser eyes and a PhD in theoretical physics. Vex'tar hails from Prismatica 7, a world where the very air is saturated with crystal dust that forms into geometric patterns of death. The weather report there includes things like scattered diamond storms with a chance of ruby avalanches. Their equivalent of mosquitoes are actually crystalline wasps that shoot laser beams from their eyes and consider titanium a light snack. A casual morning jog on Vex'tar's homeworld involves dodging through forests of razor-sharp crystal trees while being hunted by moth-like creatures the size of fighter jets that breathe concentrated light beams hot enough to melt space station hulls. Vex'tar mentioned that last Tuesday, during what he casually described as a pleasant afternoon stroll, he had to fight off 17 laser moths, 3 crystal serpents that phase in and out of reality, and something he called a geometry spider that apparently constructs deadly mathematical equations out of pure energy. He won, obviously. The fact that he considers this a relaxing way to spend a Tuesday gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here. Grondak's homeworld of Titan's Forge makes Death Valley look like a pleasant beach resort. The gravity there is roughly 8 times what we experience on Earth, which means their equivalent of house cats weigh about 400 pounds and can crush steel with their purr. The atmosphere is primarily composed of metallic vapor and liquid nitrogen, with just a hint of sulfuric acid for that fresh, homey scent. Grondak casually mentioned that their local wildlife includes creatures called magma bears, which are exactly what they sound like, except worse. These things are actual living lava in the shape of bears, standing 15 feet tall, and they're considered the cute, harmless pets that children keep for companionship. The apex predators on his world are something called gravity whales, that are so massive they create their own weather systems and hunt by generating localized black holes. Grondak's idea of a light warm-up before breakfast involves wrestling with creatures that most galactic civilizations would classify as natural disasters. Then there's Slythe's home dimension, which doesn't even have a proper name because most beings who visit it don't survive long enough to file a report. It's described in the official galactic registry as that place where geometry goes to die and mathematics cries. The Shadow Realm exists in a state of permanent twilight, where the very shadows are carnivorous, and the darkness has developed opposable thumbs and a mean streak. Slythe explained, in its whispering, reality-bending voice, that entertainment in the Shadow Realm involves hunting creatures made of pure nightmare that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Their version of a pet goldfish is apparently a writhing mass of tentacles and existential dread that feeds on the concept of hope itself. Slythe's casual weekend activities include wrestling with entities that philosophers would describe as the physical manifestation of the fear of death, and winning. And then we have Jake's world, Earth. Jake's most exciting predator encounter this year involved a raccoon that got into his garbage can and gave him what he described as a really mean look before waddling away with a bag of potato chips. His greatest hunting achievement was successfully removing a family of opossums from under someone's porch using a flashlight and what he called gentle encouragement, which I suspect means he asked them nicely to leave. When asked to describe Earth's most dangerous predators, Jake nervously mentioned that one time he saw a goose at the park that seemed pretty aggressive. And there was this spider in his basement that was probably venomous, but I just used a cup and some cardboard to relocate it outside, because killing stuff makes me feel bad. The other contestants listened to this with what I can only describe as barely contained amusement. Vex'tar's crystal carapace was literally glowing with what I assume was laughter. Grondak's rumbling chuckles were registering on seismic equipment 3 star systems away. Slythe's shadowy form was rippling in patterns that roughly translated to "This is the funniest thing I've experienced in several millennia." The betting pools updated Jake's survival odds to 75,000 to 1 after his description of Earth's dangerous wildlife. Several bookmakers have started taking bets on whether Jake will accidentally eliminate himself before the first challenge even begins. This is going to be absolutely beautiful to watch. The first challenge of the Galactic Hunting Championship takes place in the Nexus Arena's biodome, a delightful little ecosystem they've designed to simulate the hunting conditions of a dozen different nightmare worlds simultaneously. The objective is simple: stealth hunting. Contestants have 4 hours to track and eliminate as many targets as possible without being detected by the local fauna, which has been specifically engineered to sense fear, aggression, and pretty much any emotion that might indicate you're thinking about killing something. The arena contains everything from void stalkers that can smell hostile intent from 3 miles away to empathy parasites that literally feed on murderous thoughts. It's like hide and seek, except everyone's playing with telepathic nightmare creatures that want to eat your face. Our contestants approach this challenge with their typical species-appropriate strategies. Vex'tar activated some kind of crystal cloaking device that bent light around his form while simultaneously dampening his psychic signature. He moved through the arena like a living geometric equation, his crystal blades making absolutely no sound as he systematically hunted the larger predators with surgical precision. Watching Vex'tar work is like watching mathematics commit murder, and it's frankly beautiful in a deeply terrifying way. Grondak went with the subtlety approach that his species is famous for, which is to say he didn't. Instead, he activated what appeared to be some kind of gravitational dampening field that made his massive form weightless, allowing him to float silently through the arena like a 12-foot-tall balloon of death. His strategy involved hunting the arena's megafauna head-on, engaging in what appeared to be honorable single combat with creatures the size of city buses. The ground shook with each of his victories, and several smaller creatures apparently died from the sound waves alone. Slythe simply dispersed into shadow and became one with the darkness of the arena. Occasionally you'd catch a glimpse of tentacles emerging from seemingly empty air to drag some unfortunate creature into what I can only assume was a fate worse than death. Slythe hunted by becoming the environment itself, turning the very concept of hiding into a weapon. And then there was Jake. Jake's approach to stealth hunting was what military strategists would call unorthodox and what anyone with common sense would call completely insane. He duct-taped a flashlight to his forehead, wrapped himself in what appeared to be a space blanket for camouflage, and started crawling around the arena floor with a net and what looked like a modified bug zapper. While the other contestants were engaging in epic battles with the arena's apex predators, Jake was quietly and methodically catching what appeared to be the galactic equivalent of mice, cockroaches, and small birds. He wasn't hunting the nightmare creatures everyone was supposed to be afraid of. He was catching the little guys that nobody else was paying attention to. And here's the thing that had me questioning my understanding of basic mathematics. It was working. See, while Vex'tar was spending 20 minutes in an epic battle with one void stalker, Jake had caught 37 different varieties of space vermin. While Grondak was engaged in an honorable duel with a titan beast, Jake had quietly eliminated an entire ecosystem of smaller creatures that apparently counted just as much toward the final score. The scoreboard started showing numbers that made absolutely no sense. Vex'tar had eliminated 12 high-value targets with his usual crystal precision. Grondak had successfully defeated 8 mega creatures in what appeared to be the most honorable way possible. Slythe had absorbed the life essence of 15 medium-tier nightmare beasts. Jake had somehow managed to catch and relocate 234 small creatures using what appeared to be techniques he'd learned from a pest control manual and an unshakable belief that everything deserved a chance to live somewhere else. The other contestants started paying attention when the first challenge results were announced. Jake wasn't in last place. He wasn't even in third place. He was in second place, trailing behind Vex'tar by only 12 points. And that gap was closing fast. Vex'tar's crystal carapace stopped glowing with amusement. Grondak's seismic chuckling became noticeably quieter. Slythe's shadows started rippling in what I was beginning to recognize as confusion. Jake, meanwhile, was asking if anyone had a band-aid because he'd gotten a small cut from his duct tape and wanted to make sure it didn't get infected. The medics assured him that galactic medical technology could handle a minor adhesive injury. The betting pools went absolutely insane. Jake's odds shifted from 75,000 to 1 to 500 to 1 almost instantly, causing what economic experts would later describe as the most inexplicable market fluctuation in recorded galactic history. This was getting interesting. The second challenge results came in, and I'm not going to lie, I had to check the scoring system twice because the numbers were making my head hurt. Jake Murphy, pest control technician from Detroit, was now in second place overall with a score that had professional gamblers across 17 star systems questioning their life choices. The second challenge had been adaptive hunting, where contestants were dropped into randomly generated environments and had to successfully track and eliminate targets using only tools they could find or create on the spot. It was designed to test improvisational hunting skills and the ability to adapt predatory techniques to unfamiliar territory. Vex'tar had approached this with typical crystal precision, analyzing the molecular composition of his environment and constructing elaborate geometric traps that were essentially death equations made physical. Grondak had simply picked up the largest available objects and used them as improvised weapons, turning trees into clubs and boulders into throwing stones. Slythe had merged with the environmental shadows and become a living natural disaster. Jake had built what appeared to be the most complicated mousetrap in galactic history, using nothing but local materials and engineering principles he'd apparently learned from internet videos. Then he'd systematically caught everything smaller than a bread box while the other contestants were fighting over the big game. This is when the other contestants started getting suspicious. Vex'tar requested a review of Earth's official species classification from the Galactic Registry. What he found there made his crystal structure start resonating at frequencies that caused several nearby electronic devices to malfunction. The Galactic Registry had Earth listed as a Class F peaceful world with minimal predatory species and inhabitants that pose no significant threat to galactic security. The official report described humans as mostly harmless bipeds with limited hunting capabilities, and Earth's wildlife is generally docile with few notable predatory adaptations. This is where I got to have some fun. See, the thing about official galactic surveys is that they're conducted by xenobiologists who spend maybe 6 months on a planet, hang out in the safe areas, and then file a report based on what they consider normal behavior. The survey team that visited Earth apparently landed in Canada, met some very polite people, saw a few deer and some harmless-looking animals, and concluded that we were basically a planet of friendly herbivores. They missed a few things, like the fact that humans are endurance predators who evolved to literally run animals to death, that we're one of the few species in the galaxy that hunts other predators for sport, that we've driven more species to extinction in the last few centuries than most civilizations manage in their entire history, that we took wolves, apex predators that other species flee from, and turned them into purse accessories that wear little sweaters. But it gets better. The survey team somehow missed honey badgers, which are basically furry balls of concentrated hatred that will fight anything up to and including their own reflection. They missed geese, which are the closest thing to pure evil that evolution has ever produced. They missed hippos, which kill more humans per year than lions, crocodiles, and sharks combined, and they do it because they think it's funny. They definitely missed Australia, which is basically an entire continent designed by natural selection to kill everything that lives there. And somehow the things that live there are still thriving because they've become more dangerous than the continent itself. The other contestants were reviewing this information with what I can only describe as growing horror. Vex'tar's crystal form was shifting through colors that I'm pretty sure don't exist in normal spacetime. Grondak's gravitational field was fluctuating in a way that was making nearby objects float randomly. Slythe's shadow form was writhing in patterns that roughly translated to what the hell is wrong with this species. Jake, meanwhile, was eating what appeared to be a peanut butter sandwich and asking if anyone knew whether the arena's medical bay had anything for seasonal allergies because the artificial pollen was making his eyes water. The betting pools had entered what economists were calling complete chaos mode. Jake's odds had shifted to 50-1 and were fluctuating so rapidly that several gambling establishments had stopped taking bets entirely. Professional sports analysts across the galaxy were frantically researching human hunting techniques and discovering information that was making them question everything they thought they knew about predatory behavior. The really fun part was watching the other contestants start to take Jake seriously. Vex'tar began studying Jake's techniques with the focus of a graduate student. Grondak started asking respectful questions about human hunting strategies. Slythe's shadow form started following Jake around, apparently trying to understand how someone could be simultaneously non-threatening and devastatingly effective. Jake was still asking when he could go home, but he'd started adding questions about whether they had any good restaurant recommendations for when this was all over. He was getting confident, and that should have been everyone's first warning that things were about to get very interesting. The final challenge was announced: survival hunting on Omega Station, an artificial world designed to replicate the most dangerous hunting conditions from across the galaxy. It was supposed to be the ultimate test of predatory supremacy. I was starting to suspect that whoever designed this test had never met a human with a roll of duct tape and a complete lack of understanding about when to quit. This was going to be fun. Omega Station is what happens when galactic engineers get together and decide to create the ultimate death world. It's an artificial planet designed to combine the worst aspects of every dangerous environment in known space. Gravity that shifts without warning, atmosphere that's technically breathable but tastes like liquid regret, weather patterns that include acid rain mixed with temporal anomalies. and wildlife that was specifically engineered to be as lethally creative as possible. The final challenge was simple in concept: survive for 24 hours while hunting designated targets across the station's various biomes. Points would be awarded based on the difficulty and rarity of eliminated creatures, with bonus multipliers for style, efficiency, and what the rules ominously referred to as creative problem-solving. The contestants were dropped at different locations across the station with basic survival gear and a tracker showing the locations of high-value targets. From there, it was pure predatory instinct versus engineered nightmare fuel. Vex'tar landed in the Crystal Wastes, a region designed to mimic his homeworld but with everything dialed up to 11. He immediately began calculating optimal hunting patterns while his crystal blades resonated in harmony with the environment. Watching Vex'tar work was like observing a living weapon system optimized for maximum efficiency. Every movement was precise, every strike was calculated, every target was eliminated with mathematical perfection. Grondak found himself in the gravity fields, where the artificial gravitational fluctuations created combat conditions that would have liquefied most species. For Grondak, this was essentially a mild workout with scenery. He began systematically working through the megafauna with what appeared to be genuine enjoyment, treating creatures that could level city blocks like sparring partners. Slythe dispersed across the shadow zones, regions where artificial darkness had been given predatory instincts. This was Slythe's element, and the creature began hunting with an efficiency that was causing reality to develop stress fractures in the immediate vicinity. Jake landed in what the station designers had labeled the adaptive environment zone, which was supposed to constantly shift between different deadly biomes to test ultimate survival flexibility. Here's what the station designers hadn't counted on. The adaptive environment zone was basically just a slightly more dangerous version of Earth. There were forests with carnivorous trees, but Jake had grown up in Michigan, where the trees just tried to kill you with seasonal depression and falling branches. There were swamps with predatory quicksand, but Jake had done pest control in Louisiana, where the mosquitoes are large enough to require flight plans and the alligators have learned to open doors. There were desert regions with heat-seeking sandworms, but Jake had worked summers in Arizona, where the pavement melts and the cacti have developed a personal vendetta against the concept of moisture. There were tundra zones with ice creatures that hunted by sensing body heat, but Jake was from Detroit, where winter is just another word for character building and the cold has given up trying to kill people because they're too stubborn to die. While the other contestants were adapting their proven techniques to new environments, Jake was doing what humans do best, refusing to admit that something was impossible and improvising solutions that should not work but somehow did. He built shelters using principles he'd learned from YouTube survival videos and materials he'd improvised from station debris. He created trap systems that combined pest control techniques with what appeared to be engineering knowledge he'd absorbed from binge-watching home improvement shows. He caught and relocated dangerous creatures using methods that professional xenobiologists would later describe as utterly nonsensical, but inexplicably effective. The really beautiful part was watching Jake's persistence hunting techniques in action. While the other contestants were engaging in spectacular battles with individual high-value targets, Jake was systematically tracking creatures across multiple biomes. He would identify a target, follow it for hours without engaging, learn its patterns, predict its behavior, and then eliminate it with minimal effort using environmental hazards and improvised tools. He wasn't hunting like a predator. He was hunting like an engineer with a personal grudge against inefficiency. The kill count scoreboard became the center of galaxy-wide attention. Major news networks were providing live coverage. Professional hunters were analyzing techniques. Military strategists were taking notes. Betting pools had become so volatile that several star systems had declared martial law to prevent gambling-related riots. Vex'tar's score was climbing steadily with surgical precision. Grondak was racking up points through sheer overwhelming force. Slythe's numbers were increasing in ways that were causing the scoreboard's mathematics subroutines to file error reports. And Jake's score was climbing faster than anyone could explain, using methods that defied conventional understanding of how hunting was supposed to work. The final hour arrived with Jake in first place by a margin that had statisticians questioning their understanding of basic mathematics. The other contestants had started hunting with what could only be described as desperate intensity, but pushing their abilities to limits that were causing environmental damage to the station itself. When the final results were announced, the silence across the galaxy was so profound that several civilizations thought their communication networks had failed. Jake Murphy, pest control technician from Detroit, had won the Galactic Hunting Championship with a final score that broke the previous record by 40%. The universe's apex predator was a human who'd gotten into this competition by accident and spent most of it asking when he could go home. The aftermath of Jake's victory was, to put it mildly, the most spectacular collective identity crisis in recorded galactic history. Professional predator species across 17 star systems suddenly found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about hunting, survival, and their place in the universal food chain. Vex'tar, who had dominated this competition for 4 consecutive years, was standing very still in what I recognized as his species' equivalent of a complete mental breakdown. His crystal carapace was cycling through colors that don't have names in most languages, and he kept making clicking sounds that roughly translated to "this does not compute" repeated approximately 4,000 times. Grondak was sitting in the corner of the arena, staring at his massive hands with the expression of someone who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew about strength was wrong. Occasionally he would mutter something in his native language that the translators kept rendering as "but how in Detroit you said Detroit." Slythe had condensed into a small, very dense shadow that was quietly rippling in patterns that suggested an existential crisis of interdimensional proportions. Several reality stabilizers had been deployed around Slythe's location, because their emotional state was causing local space-time to develop what could best be described as philosophical anxiety. Jake, meanwhile, was trying to figure out how to carry his trophy, which was apparently made from crystallized fear and weighed about 40 pounds. He kept asking if anyone had a shipping box, because he wasn't sure how to get it home, and whether someone could call him a cab because he had to work Monday and his boss was already annoyed about him taking the time off. This is when I got to deliver the final punchline that would cement humanity's reputation across the galaxy for the next several millennia. Ladies and gentlemen, beings of various geometries and states of matter, I announced over the arena's communication system, I feel I should mention something that makes this victory even more special. Jake Murphy wasn't actually Earth's first choice for this competition. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear Slythe's shadows whimpering softly. Earth doesn't actually have a first choice for this kind of thing. Because we didn't know this competition existed until someone called asking for our apex predator representative. Jake won this competition not because he's Earth's ultimate hunter. Jake won because he's the guy who happened to answer the phone when someone called pest control looking for directions. Vex'tar's crystal structure began resonating at a frequency that was causing small earthquakes. Grondak's gravitational field fluctuated so violently that several nearby objects achieved temporary orbit. Slythe's shadow form began displaying what the translators helpfully identified as screaming in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Earth's actual apex predators, I continued, because apparently I enjoy causing interdimensional incidents, are currently going about their daily lives completely unaware that this competition exists. Our military hasn't been informed. Our hunters haven't been consulted. Our scientists think this is all a documentary filming project that got really elaborate. The other contestants were now staring at Jake with expressions that ranged from horror to fascination to what appeared to be religious awakening. Jake was trying to clean his glasses with his shirt and asking if anyone knew whether the prize money was taxable income. So congratulations, Galaxy, I concluded. You've just discovered that the most dangerous predator species in known space considers what Jake just did to be a fairly routine Tuesday at work. And they sent us their equivalent of a mild-mannered customer service representative. The betting pools crashed so hard that several star systems' economies briefly collapsed. Professional hunters across the galaxy began frantically researching human techniques. Military strategists started requesting detailed analyses of Earth's pest control methodologies. Several species requested that Earth be reclassified as a do not disturb unless absolutely necessary, and even then maybe reconsider world. Jake's victory tour consisted of him asking 3 more times about getting a ride home, wondering if anyone had Tylenol because the arena lighting was giving him a headache, and mentioning that his girlfriend was going to be really excited about the prize money, because they'd been saving up for a new washer and dryer. 6 months later, Jake returned to his regular pest control job in Detroit, but with a slight modification to his business model. His truck now advertised Murphy Pest Control, Galactic Champion services, and he charged premium rates for what he called experienced interdimensional vermin management. Business was booming, mostly because half the galaxy was now convinced that any creature humans considered a pest was probably capable of conquering entire star systems. Earth's official response to our new galactic reputation was typically human. The government issued a statement saying they were pleased by Jake's achievement and looking forward to continued peaceful relationships with our galactic neighbors. Then they quietly started a program to train more people like Jake, just in case. The Galactic Hunting Championship was retired indefinitely after Jake's victory, with organizers claiming they needed to restructure the competition to account for previously unknown variables. What they actually meant was that they needed to figure out how to create challenges that could account for the fact that the galaxy's most dangerous predators considered this kind of thing a fun weekend activity. And that, beings of questionable judgment, is how a pest control technician from Detroit accidentally convinced the entire galaxy that humanity was composed of friendly, harmless creatures who just happened to be the most terrifyingly effective hunters in known space. Jake Murphy, by the way, is still taking calls at Murphy Pest Control. His rates have gone up considerably, but customer satisfaction remains at 100%. After all, when you've proven you can hunt interdimensional nightmare creatures using duct tape and improvised engineering, a few raccoons in the attic really aren't that challenging. The galaxy has been remarkably quiet lately. Turns out nobody wants to be the species that accidentally picks a fight with the friendly folks from the pest control planet. Marcus Webb, signing off. Remember, if you ever find yourself in Detroit and you've got a vermin problem, give Jake a call. He's very reasonable, surprisingly effective, and he'll probably ask if you want him to relocate the creatures somewhere nice instead of eliminating them. Because apparently that's the most terrifying thing you can say in this galaxy.